I'm going to go this way. Good afternoon. Thank you so much to Josh for that wonderful introduction, and Maren for inviting me to be here with all of you today. I am really, really excited. I was been hearing a lot about Syracuse because some of your residents have been coming to visit us in Buffalo for about a decade. And it started with our friend Christina, who came with a bunch of other folks from all over the country, and she said, "Oh my God, the West Side is my neighborhood. This is my neighborhood." And so she just kept bringing people back and forth, and we've developed a wonderful friendship and a wonderful working relationship. And most recently, I had an opportunity to come and visit the North Side community and was given a tour and welcomed here, and it does remind me so much of Buffalo. So I'm really, really excited to meet all of you, and thank you all for the wonderful and warm welcome today. So a little bit about me, Rawa Garmatian. I think you heard from my resume. I am a generalist. I don't really know anything about anything. I know a lot, don't get me wrong, right? But how I learned all these things was just like flowing like water and addressing a lot of issues that my family had to address. You know, my mom was a single mom of 5 children here in America. I did not know, but I felt the word racism a year into my time here, and I remember being scared, and then read the autobiography of Frederick Douglass, and I understood that the word was racism, right? And so there are a lot of different things at play that create the conditions that our communities have. Some of it is intentional, some of it is policy, and some of it is just, you know, decades and decades of disinvestment, and here we are. And so the only thing I've ever tried to do was try to understand, why are these conditions the conditions, and then how do we change it? So I'm about 25 plus years in, and so I've learned a few things. But one of the first things I want to say is I was working at this political activist theater company, Ujima. I really came in as a volunteer because I like what they were doing, and that's where I got politicized, and that's where I got my political education and understood all the different ways people are oppressed, not just in my local community, but globally. And so our job was really simply to build the beloved community. We defined the community as the world, but the most oppressed group, because we can only affect change right where we are, the most affected group happened to be African Americans. And even though we did plays, you know, really for Native American people and with Native American people, with the Latino community, and they started their own theater community, the primary voice that we spoke in was the Black experience as it related to Buffalo, New York. And so, yeah, yes ma'am. And then after that, I went to public health because having all that political education and just educating people around those issues didn't seem to be enough. It wasn't making a big difference in my community. So I became a public health professional for a couple of years, and I learned all about the social determinants of health and health policy, and that healthcare, you know, what is the health of a community? Healthcare is like 10%. If I need surgery, I will go to an American hospital. For everything else, not so much. And, you know, I was also told, like, you know, Black people are predisposed to get diabetes, blah, blah, blah. No, we are not. We are not. It is the conditions, right? It is the legacy of slavery. It is the legacy of colonialism. It is segregation. It is, you know, lack of access. It is the release of cortisol constantly in our bodies because of fight or flight that causes our internal organs to break down. And that was really challenging for me to understand all of that. What actually makes the difference in our communities are our built environments, where we live, where we work, where we play, where we go to, you know, if you're into church, you know, what church do you go to? All of those things. It's access to, you know, different kinds of amenities like healthy food. It is access to parks. It is addressing public safety in our communities. It is having a social fabric and cohesion. That's what makes us healthy, right? And so if we wanted to change those conditions, then we have to begin to think in terms of how do we address the built environments in our communities. The #1 health marker in the United States, you could be a smoker, you could use all kinds of drugs and, drink, like all of those things. But in this country, health equals wealth. So the same person that does those things and a person who's like very rich, they're going to be fine. A person who's poor, they're going to have terrible health outcomes, right? And so those are the things that I was working with. So that also was great to learn about, but it didn't feel like it was enough. Like I wanted to then go to the grassroots to really begin to address those issues. And I was friends with these guys, Push Buffalo, when they first got started. They were just a bunch of organizers, and I was an organizer, so I was like a cultural organizer. They were organizing, and so we would actually work a lot together to begin to address like what are some of the issues and what can we do. And this story about my community, I don't want you to like look at it or hear it and think, oh, we can't do that. That is the wrong attitude. I was just telling Sis over here, I said, please do not tell me you can't do something. Please do not, because you know what? I'm guaranteed to do it. And that is what our community believes. Like when I started at Push Buffalo, we started with the framework of help is not coming. What are we going to do? We used a framework of, you know what? I know some things, but I don't know a whole lot of things, right? You know some things, and you know some things, and you know some things, and you know some, but together, we actually know a lot, right? And so those were the frameworks that got us started. So this is just the story about my community. I hope it's a source of inspiration, and I hope that you guys will utilize this to think in terms of like, what are the opportunities in our community? So we always start with the assets. You have assets. And then we begin to address, well, what's missing? So this is really it. And so I'll tell you a little bit about it. And really it starts with the people. I'm going to come back to this framework because it's a very important framework. Once we started to get sophisticated, we started coming up with frameworks and, working with other people all over the country that also have some of these frameworks. And this is going to seem very complicated because when I first heard it, I was like, this sounds beautiful. What is it? Right? I didn't understand it, but now I'm like deeply embedded in it. So we'll come back to this, but I wanted you to see it, that there is an actual strategy that we are using. But I'm going to start with my neighborhood. So this is the green development zone. That little green arrow is where we were about 6 or 7 years ago, and then we've expanded it to about 40 blocks. So what you see is about 20 square blocks, and these are all the different interventions that we've done in our zone. And we named the zone for several reasons. Like Buffalo has a lot of issues, just like Syracuse. But we chose this area in particular because it abuts a very, very prominent neighborhood. It's literally been named one of the 10 best neighborhoods in the country. And even during Buffalo's 50-year nosedive decline, economic decline, that neighborhood always remained very stable. They call it the Elmwood Village. But if you go a block, so one block, you go, here's Richmond Avenue. If you're on this side, you go block in. Average family was about, when we first started about 17 years ago, was making about $19,000 per, and these are working people, it's the working poor. You go over one block over there, 67,000, that's what it jumps to, and then it keeps getting more and more and more. So you can imagine, right? And so we didn't have a whole lot of ideas about where we would start because Buffalo, east side of Buffalo in particular, where most of the black folk are, very disinvested in, but they had mowed down many of the homes and things like that. It just, and the geography is much larger. You can fit about 5 west sides on the east side of Buffalo. So that felt like just too overwhelming for us because we didn't know anything. We're just organizers. We didn't know nothing. And so we started here. The other reason why we chose this area is A, its proximity, and we knew that eventually, because both coasts, what was happening is everybody was saying moving back to the city. And we knew, so Buffalo has 283,000 people right now. When we started, it was about 250 something, right? But the surrounding community, because of white flight, was 1.1 million. So now we're like, oh my God, if all these people move back to the city, where are we gonna go? Right? It's scary, it's still scary. And so we were thinking like that, as we knew what was happening bi-coastal. Eventually, even though we were like 30 years behind everybody else in the country, this is gonna happen in our community. So what is the #1 way to build community wealth in America?
Passing it on.
Say it again?
Passing it on.
Yes, that is a big one. But what are they passing on?
The
Property.
Property
Yes.
and whatever monies you build up.
That's right. If you own land in this country, you got wealth, right? And so we didn't have any wealth. And, you know, when we first started organizing our community, when we put everybody around and, you know, we're like, you know, most people rent their places and what have you, there just was no community wealth. And what our community said is like, there are two pressing issues in our community. We need quality livable housing. Just like y'all, we have the second oldest housing stock in the country, built before insulation was ever invented, right? Cold weather, although it's changing now. But also lead, asbestos. Most of our housing is built in the 1880s, early 1900s, so over 100 years old. Lead, mold, asbestos. And then because of the disinvestment, you have, you know, leaky roofs, bad foundation, terrible wind, like all the things, right? And so even people could afford to live in a home. They would pay more for their gas bill during the winter months than they did their mortgage or their rent. And it's like leaking money out the window, right? So these are all the things that we're dealing with. So quality livable housing was the number one thing people wanted, please. The second thing was we want good paying jobs. Everybody worked in the service industry. And so there aren't that many, at that time there weren't as many great paying jobs in Buffalo. So we had to be thinking about those things, right? But then we asked people, what are some of your assets, right? Some of their assets were like, we know how to repair homes and all kinds of things. We're like, oh great, houses need to be repaired, you're good at this. So we started pairing them up. What other assets do you have? So we listed out all of these assets. And so, you know, we didn't know a whole lot of things. So we partnered with the University of Buffalo. They had a housing clinic and they helped us think through, you know, addressing both the assets and the challenges in our community. That's what we call our community planning. So we brought together 400 interested people, just like y'all, from the neighborhood, and we blew up the maps and we said, sit every 4 blocks. So that's how we would, that's your zone. So zone 1, zone 2, zone 3. So that map that you saw, we broke it down to about 12 zones. And everybody got to sit, and then they identified for us all the derelict properties, all the potential land and what have you. And we're like, okay, now we're gonna do that's our homework, is identify how do we take over some of these vacancies. And in our neighborhood, so I know east side of Buffalo, there's some blocks that had 50, 60% vacancy. In ours, we were only at about 25% vacancy, 1 in every 4 homes, right? So they identified all those for us. We put them on little dots, and they were able to analyze. So the students at UB, the housing clinic, analyzed all that information for us. And then we got into a whole situation where like, who owns these houses? So that was our first campaign. And so we did a big, notorious thing. And you know, all those boarded up houses, we got an artist to come and stencil Pataki's face. So the gray boards, we had this huge stencil of Pataki's face in red, and then said, do you know who owns this house? No? Call. And like literally just spray painted on the boards his face, his telephone number, and his phone number, like just basically call him. And we started all this crap. It was like a very big media situation. They're like, who's Push? Who's Push? We're just, you know, fly by the night. And then Pataki, y'all remember, had some kind of scandal. It wasn't even this scandal, so he leaves office. But Patterson, he knew better. He knew this was bubbling up because we had a big media push. And he quietly did a thing. That's when because what we discovered, and he knew that we discovered it at this point completely by accident, y'all. There was a Ponzi scheme. So do y'all remember Bear Stearns? They were cooking the books. And they were selling all of our housing, and they would bundle them up and say, oh, Buffalo, New York. And people from all over the world were buying up all these properties, and it was just thousands and thousands of properties. So he didn't want no smoke. So he ended up just basically releasing these houses back into the NREM property, our foreclosure list. So we still have about 7,000 houses in the NREM, but we were really smart and said, we're gonna start buying up the land before anybody else figures out what we've done, which was amazing. And so we started buying land, $500 a lot, $1,200 of vacancy of the housing and what have you. And we just kept buying them. We had nothing that we were gonna do with them. And we put them into a land bank. But Syracuse, y'all are lucky, because you have an amazing city that is land banking, and y'all have a great relationship. We didn't have a great relationship with our city. But, all right, so I digress, because I can go on and on. So just to say, and I want to make this exciting and interesting for y'all, okay? So if I'm like leaning to a place where it's not interesting, just holler at me. I will bring it back, if you will. But these are some conditions. So what we ended up getting good at, because I'm going to fast forward a little bit, it's going to be a very nonlinear presentation, is that we started getting really good at creating the conditions that would help us with the community plan, because those 400 people were accountable to them, right? And we were meeting every single month with them and saying, these are the things. And then we created a smaller community development committee, right, that would meet with us and like keep us honest as we, because it's like sometimes we move too fast, right, as an organization. And we were young, we didn't know what we're just like figuring stuff out. And so we would have these monthly meetings though where we would give everybody an update on the plan that we had created together. And so we're like, okay, this house that you identified here, whatever. And so the first house we ever bought, we didn't have any money. As we finished the plan, as we were unlocking this crazy Ponzi scheme, we applied for a $30,000 Green for All fellowship and we got it. And that's how we started our not-for-profit. But we were meeting for an entire year. No not-for-profit, nothing, just a bunch of organizers. But in that, we also came up with some strategies, right? So what are our strategies? What is the purpose of PUSH? What are the goals? What are the strategies? And what are the tactics? And what is the timeline, right? Because we want to be action oriented. We want to get things done. And so that's where we were now beginning to understand this is how we create the conditions to move through the timelines that we are setting. So all of our work, by the way, starts with community organizing and developing our leaders. Our leaders tell us what to do. I am not in charge. I was not in charge even when I was in charge. So we pursue this through basically the needs: green affordable housing development, green infrastructure to address our combined sewer overflow, but for us it was a workforce strategy, creating pathways to green jobs and training, and assisting families and businesses to access weatherization, home repair, and now renewable energy. So this is what it looks like, and I want you to meet some of our people. So these are the easy things that we create to like meet with our community. So we still hold the community congresses. We do them on an annual basis. We still have the Community Development Committee that meets every single month. We have now also a Climate Justice Committee, and most recently we have a community solar group that is community owned. They're coming up with their own co-op. So our members are going to be owning the community solar projects that we have. These are our people. I told you they look like y'all, right? This looks like your community. It's our community. So it's intergenerational, it's multiracial. Here are young people. This is, when we say, we have a few sayings. Real people have real power. These are our young people that were in Albany for a lobby day to meet with all of our legislators, and that was before we passed the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. So this is the New York Renews Coalition, which PUSH is a founding member, and we helped pass the CLCPA. It was originally called the Climate and Community Protection Act, but you know, your boy, who was our outgoing, what's his name? Who was the county executive? Not county executive. Who's the the governor? Cuomo. Oh, yeah. He had climate leadership, so he added the L. We're like, fine, we'll take it. But these were, I can't tell you how many times we took busloads of people. We take literally 2 buses, one full of like our elders and just, you know, all the other generations, and a bus full of youth. Because when they go to make noise in Albany, the legislators will listen. And climate change is, as much as it is all of our issue, they're the ones that are going to be stuck with the burdens of it. And here we are. Here's just a couple of, again, more of our community members. This is us building a house. You can't see it, but it's our training house. It was also that young man who was one of our trainees. He grew up watching us. He goes, I was 6 years old when you built the first house across the street from me. And then we taught him how to build houses. And now he's got some big wig job working for the Buffalo Public Schools. Here are people, again, fighting for energy affordability and unlocking money to come to our community. Here's our young people. And then here's some actual solar projects that we built. This is a pilot project. This is a net zero house. We did that in 2010 with youth-built students, all of the unions, and this is where we first learned how to do net zero housing. That was in 2010. We've learned a lot, and the technology's really caught up a lot. And I'll tell you about the most recent project, which this is how long it took us to learn how to adapt to go to a bigger scale. So we start out very small. We do 1 project, 2 projects, 4 projects, 20 projects, 18 projects, 46 projects, you know what I mean? That's how we've increased over the last decade. So here's one of our housing. So where we are right now is we've completed 91 units that are fully rented. In partnership with Housing Visions, we have 46 units. It was our first LIHTC project. The state would not let us do it alone, even though we owned all the properties. So we said, fine. But since then, we've done 3 LIHTC projects on our own. So you have to learn sometimes. So sometimes it might not be a partnership that you want or you thought you wanted. But you know what? The reality is, we want the expertise and knowledge to lie within community, and sometimes that means we have to be in relationship and until we can actually attain those skills, and then we go out on our own. We also are planning currently 32 more housing is on the pipeline. But look at, so this housing, this was empty for about 60, 70 years, except for that little paint store. It was then it was like shuttered for a decade before we got it. So we have 5 units, and look what we're able to do. We have beautiful metal roof. Why metal roof? It's a better conductor. It lasts longer, and at the end of its life, you can recycle it, y'all. We have, look, it looks just like wood because Buffalo has beautiful architecture. It's hardy board plank. All of our housing has hardy board plank. Again, better conductor, cement-based, it can be recycled at the end of its life, right? So just because we're poor doesn't mean we can't have nice things. So Buffalo used to build housing to the 100-year mark. We're trying to build our housing to the 100-year mark. Trust me, our housing looks better than almost just as comparable to the more affluent folks in our community. And so we make very little developer development fees, which is not a good practice, but also it means we actually had a national organization assess how we source our materials. We are not quite where we want to be in the greenest, because that's like really expensive, but we are very high up there where all of our stuff is green. So this is the kind of thing. The other beautiful thing we have, I said we don't have a great relationship with our city. What they will do is every time we rehab a home, they come and give them brand new sidewalks. Isn't that beautiful? I love it. And then that's a green infrastructure project. I'll talk about that another time. Here's, again, some more of our people. So Push Green is one of our departments that does the weatherization. So they do home repair. They have what's called warm and dry on the west side. Then we weatherize you once we remediate the indoor pollutants and also address structural issues. Then we weatherize, because we don't want to button you up if you got lead in the house. And people will do that, which is not good. And then what we do, and we address roof, structures, windows, then we weatherize, and now we are going to build renewable energy. Here are our workers working on, again, another training house. Look at that, all the beautiful solar. So 80 trainees that came out of prison did that house. That's 16 Winter, next to the Net Zero House 10 Winter, where we had 43 youth build kids do it. This is one of he was a trainee, but now is a trainer, Eddie Ice Cream. And and then 3 came from Habitat for Humanity. And we've got, so that's the kind of work that we do. We are not only dreaming up our community, the people that are of and from our community are the ones rebuilding it. And everybody in the organization, whether you're coming in through the workforce training center, everybody makes a living wage. Everybody gets paid time off. Everybody gets to be treated with dignity, and everybody has health care benefits. When we connect you to another job, we actually negotiate all those terms for our workers, because oftentimes they will try to treat us differently. But what we have is we have actual case managers within the organization that play that sort of intermediary role. The benefits of green infrastructure, I think Josh was talking about it, is so we do things like rain gardens, we do green roofs, vegetated swales, stormwater. What it does is, it beautifies the neighborhood, right? It's great for the ecology. We use nothing but native plants, so pollinators, other native plants. But really for us, an old American city, our combined sewer overflow, so all the rainwater, stormwater, and all of your potable water from your indoor household goes through a pipe, goes into the sewer system, and about 52 times a year, either from heavy rain or snow melt, what we have is raw sewage, instead of going to the treatment center, raw sewage that goes into the Buffalo River and Niagara River, our freshwater source. Disgusting. And so what we do is we disconnect the downspout, put it through a perforated piping system into a beautiful rain garden, and redirect the water that is coming from your stormwater into that land, just like God intended, or the creator, or whatever, however the universe works, the creation is it goes back into that. And it's actually great because it addresses heat island effect. It addresses, obviously when there's green space in a community, we know that's a great de-stressor, so when we talk about cortisol. But for us, the reason why we did it is it was a workforce strategy. So it's opening up new ways for people to get jobs. So here's our people. This is a permeable paver that was installed in 2013. I haven't done anything else to it. It still looks like that. Here are some cisterns. We have above ground and below ground. Here's some of our beautiful farms. These are our farmers. So we have these different sites throughout our neighborhood where people can farm and grow food and they feed their families in lots. And so we have a lot of immigrants and refugees from Burma and Africa that know how to do vertical farming. So they're teaching our older Americans. So the new Americans are teaching the older Americans how to do that kind of farming and actually upskilling them. And when the city of Buffalo was under an EPA consent decree, they could not get their long-term plan accepted. So we worked with them until they adapted green infrastructure into their plan. So $400 million dedicated to gray infrastructure. They took $90 million of that and put it towards green infrastructure over the next decade. And so that's how we started a whole workforce strategy throughout the city. This is a pinnacle project for us. So remember I told you we had to partner with Housing Vision. So we did 46 units of housing, scattered site with Housing Visions. And even though we owned all the land, we had to, unfortunately, be in a forced marriage with them because of LIHTC. And so our next big project, though, was this. Our community one year, I'll never forget it. I had my baby, an ergo baby. I just had a baby. I'm registering people. Place just like this, one of our community centers. Everybody was around tables. We had everybody in zones, and baby was finally taking a nap, so but I'm ear hustling, and I'm like, why is everybody going to the zone 8? I don't understand. And it's because School 77, all of a sudden they're telling stories. I went to school there. My mother was a teacher there, and there's the principal here, and blah. I'm like, oh my God. And so then they wanted us to take over this. It was at the edge of our green development zone at the time. This is in 2014, y'all. And we were growing by leaps and bounds. I was like, we cannot possibly take this on. Like, we're going to collapse from all of this. And our founder at the time, thank God he was still the executive director, goes, let's just do our best, Ra. I'm like, okay, let's go. And so, because this is what the community raised as the priority, and they said, there are too many people coming here in trucks that we don't recognize taking photos of this building. We know what that means, right? And this is a very quickly gentrifying neighborhood now. I told y'all we weren't even thinking about gentrifying. We thought we had more time. No, not anymore. And so we decided that we didn't have a lot of money at that time still. And we didn't have the wherewithal. We had just started 2 other programs, and we were in the middle of a 46-unit project. We had never done a project that big, like what? And so we sent our organizers out into the street. We created these little comment cards, these right here, those. And in a month, starting March 1st until April 1st, collected over 660 comment cards. This is the map. It shows you all the people. So this is where the school is. We went around, to all of our members, and then had a couple of meetings, and we had those comment cards. So we're very dramatic people. I love it. I know, that's why I come from theater, you know what I'm saying? We're organizers. And so what we did is we went to downtown, we went to Councilman Rivera's office. He's our council member. We said, dumped it on his desk, all dramatic. The community has spoken. And so then he was like, okay, I don't want no smoke. I know what y'all can do. And he picked them up and he took them to the Department of Planning, and he said, we are putting a moratorium on developer designation of this building for 1 year to see if what the community wants to do and if it can do it. We said, okay. So it took us longer than that, actually. But because we kept working and we had different actions that we were taking, even though it was a 4-year planning project from that day to moving into the building. Here's a bunch of community planning. Y'all are familiar with this, right? And so I think for this one, we were learning all the different ways that we could reimagine the building. We went on learning journeys. We went on tours of different buildings that were renovated. We had to have, here's the housing. So this green arrow is generally how development works. This arrow is how we work, because we had to keep talking to the community every time a big change happened. right? And it's a lot to go through with a community. Also, it's really hard to imagine, like, you're like, I see a classroom. But then we went on a learning journey, you're like, oh, I could imagine different things, right? And so this is what it ended up looking like. Look, do you remember, look, let me show you how ugly it was. Look they had closed the windows. This is what the kids went to. All that was cemented off and what have you. So this ended up being a $15 million project. And let me just tell you all the different things that we did, because I'm probably running out of time. Yes. I know, I can go. And so, yeah, so it ended up being 30 affordable senior housing units on the top 2 floors. This is where Push Buffalo's new offices were, because we were busting at the seams, but the community also got to pick. They wanted the auditorium to be a performance space that was culturally significant to the people of our community, which is very diverse. And so they got to elect who would move in there, who the commercial tenants would be. So Ujima Theater, the company I work for, that's their home. And then Piece of the City, which serves K through a high school, Buffalo Public students, and they do things from theater programming to building a bike to other social, like they make candles and jewelry, all that. They have sports programs, they feed the kids. Pocket Park, our Pocket Park, 5 to 12-year-olds actually focus grouped it with them. Our elders, our seniors got to plan what the apartments would look like. So there's 4 different types of housing in there. Look these are our workers. These are young people that work in our community that installed the first ever 100% community solar project in the state. Once we won that on a policy level when Cuomo in 2014 did the REF process. Look at that. The elders got to design this. It is magical. There's a ramp, there are stairs, there are benches. This is a green roof, and this right here, because they wanted to be able to walk around and use it for exercise on the 3rd floor. If you pick this up, it's recycled tire, so if they fall, they're not gonna hurt themselves. But we didn't plan this, they thought of that, right? So here's all the different ways we've affected, systems level change work. This is how we train. We believe everything that we do has to be intergenerational, everything. And our community holds us to that. So we bring our children to all of the meetings. They are in the farms with us. They are learning with us. And our elders are with us. It is important to give our elders a voice. Once we decided on senior housing, Push Silver organizes all of our elders in our buildings. And here's some more of our kids learning, all the things that we do. And I will end there because I'm sure you have some questions.
Things that I've been doing or they're doing it with their lives is stuff that they learned from their mom, also from our elders in our community. Yeah. We need to support our elders and our saviors. They got knowledge and education that they can pass on to us, and we can pass it on, but we can have a political, economic, social justice base, not only for food, but the whole.
Yes. So, you sound like an organizer. So, yes. And I love, listen, that's the fire you need. I was just telling Sis, please don't tell me you can't do something, because I can't tell you. So the housing that we're currently building, it's all net zero. I told y'all in 2010 we built our first net zero house. It took us until 2021, but we're doing 49 units of housing. 30% of them, or 16 of the units, are for people that are dealing with chronic mental health issues, people that are dealing with substance abuse disorder, and either were homeless or on the verge of homelessness. And no fossil fuel infrastructure in this housing. None.
Also, I'm a recovering alcoholic and addict,
yes.
One day at a time.
Yes.
So if I can do this,
that's right.
And we share the love of who I am,
yes.
To everybody, we just got to pay it forward.
Yes.
Because I'm tired of jumping down on the floor and there's gunshots
that's
in
right.
my apartment
that's right.
area.
That's right. And I know that public safety is a big issue here.
Yes.
So I think, I don't know if you have, but I would say you sound like you're already somewhat organized. You need more people, and then come up with the strategy. This is my strategy for you. What can we do? What is the biggest priority, right? What are the conditions? What is right for harvesting, right? Because we have to always set the right conditions. Because when I'm told I can't do something, I'm going to go back to my drawing board and be like, with my community, and we're going to problem solve like a mug, right? Yeah. What conditions can we set? What barriers do we need to remove? So start with one project. Get people to just say, one project, because all of our projects, we start small, we build on it, right? Yeah. And one success gets you to another. So how you make your decision is this. what are some things that are possible right now? You can list 5 to 10 things and keep asking and keep whittling down till you get to the one thing that everybody can agree on of can we affect the conditions to make this one thing happen in 12 months? What can you do in 12 months, right? That success is going to allow you to build the other success, right? But also having these conversations are going to catalyze a whole lot of things. And then as an organizing strategy, you can say, okay, what can I do on my own? What do I need other people to help me with? And what do I need somebody else to do, right? So, for example, just say, the thing that y'all have decided is there is a lot in your block that, you know, maybe the city owns, and we want to take over that and build a meeting space and a community garden for the community, right? So say that. So now, what can you do on your own is organize and mobilize your community. What do you need somebody else to help you with is maybe somebody who is very good at doing community gardens, right? Or an organization or somebody you can partner with. And then what do you need somebody else to do for you? You need the city to give you that lot. But you can't just go and say, give me the lot. You got to go to them with a plan. Yeah. And now listen to this though. Now if they won't want to listen to you, it took us 2 years to revitalize our park. I kept sending the families back there. The people that you're organizing, be like, listen, we can come and have this conversation. We can do it like this, or I'm going to have 100 people outside of here with placards asking, Mayor, why can't we have this lot? The community wants this lot. And you just keep doing that. And you know what? No offense to you, because you know, I think you got this, right? We have lots of friends inside City Hall. The administration hates us. They see us coming and they hate us. You know what? You see all the push gear that we come with? We come with, like, you know who we're coming with. And so we will come inside City Hall, we will do these things, and we will not leave you alone until you finally figure out how to give us this land, because this is what the community needs. And then once they give it to you, be like, great, now we're all friends. We're going to do a whole media, we're going to do a press conference together, and we're all going to be smiling, we're going to shake hands, we're going to serve you some food, right? But that's what I'm saying is, like, power concedes nothing without a demand, so how are you creating the demand?
Questions that we might not be able to get to. But we could probably ask one more question. We have a few here. I'm going to maybe just read the next question. It's more about how have you navigated organizational leadership and accountability. So being accountable to the needs of the community, staff, volunteers. So within the organization, how are you accountable to all the different stakeholders you work with?
It's not easy. But what we have is our entire organizational structure from day one was built that the community's on top. Then because we are a 501c3, it's the board of directors. And then it's the the executive director, and on and on and on. But how it works is the community elects the membership, the board of directors. So many of our board of directors come through the membership as member leaders. And 75% of our board has to identify as being low income from that community. So, and then, 20% can be appointed, and those are, as we become more complicated and complex and our budget size has grown, what they do is we need like lawyers and finance folks and things like that. But that 75% is always a 75%. We have annual elections. How we stay accountable is that diagram I think I showed you, right? And then we have our different community development, like, so the community development committee, when we say, oh, we're going to build, 49 units of housing, how's it, like, are all the things that are in that community, all the community meetings that we had leading up to it, did those things happen? Now, people in our community wanted 800 things to happen at School 77. I'm not lying to you, 800 things. We whittled it down to about 10 things, right? But people knew every time a big decision happened, we have a big community meeting, we'd come back in. So everybody knew why their thing didn't happen. Like, how did we end up with the performance? They voted for the commercial tenants to come in there. They said we want as many of the spaces to be for community. So the gymnasium is for community, the community center downstairs. We have all kinds, the community can always come in, right? And we have a backup generator so that people lose power, they can come there, right? We have a kitchen facility that is open to the public downstairs. That's how they hold us accountable. Are they do they sometimes don't, we get into it? Of course. This stuff is complex, it's hard. We are dealing with people that, when I meet people that come to my organization seeking help, I'm meeting them at their worst, not their best. If I've done what I'm supposed to go to the next level, right? So this is what I do. I provide technical assistance for other communities. So we're working with Syracuse here. I work with people in Miami, people in California. We're trying to affect all these federal funds. I'll be in DC tomorrow telling them that there are organizations that are ripe to get this kind of funding support. Please make sure the money goes to the grassroots. You know, so we all, again, what can I do on my own? What can I do with somebody else? What do I need somebody else to do for me? You know what I mean? It takes all of us. Yeah. It really, really does. And I work with a lot of very dynamic, smart people that make me smarter and more dynamic every time because I'm learning from them. And we're always in a community of practice together, right?
All right, let's thank Rawa. So we're going to be moving into the next. Here today. I've already introduced Rawa, and you just heard her speak, so I'm going to move to Leah Russell. Leah Russell is coordinator of community development at the Syracuse Peacemaking Project. The community development team is community organizing, coalition building, and a native-inspired conflict resolution practice called peacemaking to address health and safety issues in Syracuse, New York. Leah also serves as lead facilitator of Take Back the Streets, a local grassroots campaign focused on improving health and safety in the west side neighborhoods of Syracuse. Leah coordinates a partnership with the city of Syracuse called the Community Ambassadors Program, which is a $1 million project designed to improve housing, justice, and equity in the city. And drawing over a decade of experience in justice system reform, Leah provides training and technical assistance on a range of topics in areas of juvenile justice, restorative justice, and community-led revitalization. Leah received her master's degree from the University of California at Santa Barbara in Latin American Studies and is a fluent Spanish speaker. Our next speaker is Kimone Jordan. Kimone is the Director of Housing and Neighborhood Planning in the Department of Neighborhood and Business Development. In that role, she advances the housing and community development investments made here in Syracuse, New York, by managing planning strategy for residential investments, as well as coordinating a variety of property disposition, strategic enforcement, and community engagement initiatives. And today she'll be sharing mostly about the Neighborhood and Business Development Project, this recent launch of the Proud Places Project, which is a new initiative that hopes to pair city intervention with resident-led planning to improve neighborhood quality of life. Our next discussant is Mark Cass. Mark Cass is a native of Syracuse and has worked in the nonprofit sector his entire career. He is active in a wide range of social justice, anti-racism, and community initiatives. Mark has been the Executive Director of the Northside Learning Center since January 2017, but he is very active in a range of other activities as well. He serves in a number of positions with community organizations such as the Literacy Coalition of Onondaga County, is a member of the Interfaith Works Roundtable of Faith Leaders, board member of the Brady Faith Center and Alliance of Communities Transforming Syracuse, and a steering committee member of the Northside Urban Partnership. Mark is a graduate of Onondaga Community College and Syracuse University, earning a bachelor's degree in social work, and he resides on the south side of Syracuse and is an active member of the Mosque of Jesus, Son of Mary. Our next panelist is Kate Auwaerter, who's a preservation planner for the city of Syracuse. Kate brings over 25 years experience working in historic preservation and planning related fields in the private, nonprofit, and public sectors. Her work experience includes positions with the Ohio Historic Preservation Office, the New York Main Street Alliance, the Downtown Committee of Syracuse, and the SUNY ESF Center for Community Design Research. As a preservation planner for the city of Syracuse, Kate oversees and advocates for the implementation of the city's preservation program, is staffed the Syracuse Landmark Preservation Board, and administers the city's certified local government program. In addition to her preservation work, Kate serves as the public art coordinator for the city, and Kate completed her undergraduate studies at Oberlin College in Ohio, and has a master's degree in historic preservation from Cornell. Our other speakers are Babette Baker and Greg Michael, who are with the Ondog Earth Corps. I unfortunately don't have bios, but I hope we get to know more about your work and hear more about some of the workforce development and big infrastructure work that you're doing here in Syracuse. So each panel set of panelists will have about 5 minutes, and we'll have some time for discussion. If you have questions on the cards, please write those down. I'll do my best to collect them all so the panelists can see those, and I'll try to moderate that the best I can. So maybe we can just start with Leah and kind of go down the line here.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. Again, my name is Leah Russell. I work for the Syracuse Peacemaking Project. The Peacemaking Project is a program of the Center for Justice Innovation, which is a larger nonprofit headquartered out of New York City, runs projects in all 5 boroughs, has a small satellite office up here in Syracuse, New York. The work that I've done over the last 13 years at the center has focused largely on community engagement and community empowerment. We opened as a peacemaking center in 2014. CJ, the center already had an office here, but when we opened the Peacemaking Center, we were really looking at providing support around resolving interpersonal conflicts in neighborhoods, neighbor disputes, folks with their family members. And we use a practice called peacemaking, and that's a Native American practice that's been used on these lands by Haudenosaunee people for thousands of years. We bring in Native American peacemaking experts to train local community members and to train our staff in how to hold circle. And then we use circle to resolve community stuff in the community, not in courts in front of strangers, but in our own neighborhoods, in our own words, with our own mechanisms for accountability. As we started to facilitate peacemaking circles within the West Side neighborhood and beyond, we heard about a lot of other challenges, right? It wasn't just conflict, it was also housing, poverty, access to education, folks feeling like their rights were being ignored, folks feeling like they really wanted to take the reins in their own neighborhoods and affect change and stop waiting for other people from the outside to come in and do for them, right? Around the time that we opened the Peacemaking Center, we got together with some other providers in the neighborhood and formed the Take Back the Streets Coalition. That has 2 main branches. It has a service provider or agency branch, and it has a resident-led branch, right? And those 2 branches talk with one another. It was a way to create a feedback loop so that the agencies and programs that were running in the neighborhood were not doing so in a vacuum. They were not guessing what people needed or wanted. They were hearing directly from community members and then engaging community members in the build out of those programs. One of the main strategies that we use to engage and empower community is called kitchen table talks. Kitchen table talks are small focus groups held in the homes of everyday residents. Personally, I've done over 100 kitchen table talks in the city of Syracuse over the last decade, speaking with over 1,000 people. So it would be like you invite 10 of your friends and neighbors, we bring the food and paper products, we have a discussion about what the neighborhood needs, what we're seeing going on, what motivates people to get more involved, and then we take the ideas and relationships that come out of those discussions and we put them to work and try to bring them to life. Following our work doing peacemaking circles, doing kitchen table talks, bringing together agencies in the neighborhood, one of the main things that we were called upon to do was advocate for folks who don't normally get their fair share of resources from city government services, and to kind of be a bridge to the many programs that are offered by neighborhood and business development. So we work closely with the city, but we are not employed by the city. We are a neighborhood community center, and all of the folks that work for us come from the neighborhoods that we serve. So I think I was invited to talk a little bit about capacity building, and I'll just say the neighborhoods we work with are already highly capable. It's a matter of directing those capacities and elevating those voices so that they're heard and that they're well funded and resourced. So thanks for being here.
Hi everyone, I'm Kimone Jordan. I am the Director of Housing and Neighborhood Planning for the city. Started with the city about 5 years ago, and this is my 2nd year in this role. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the Proud Places project. So in 2020, the mayor launched the Resurgent Neighborhood Initiative, which is really our department's way to strategize around building infill housing development in certain neighborhoods throughout the city. We identified those areas based off of what was close to community centers and libraries and schools and green spaces, what was close to commercial corridors, but also where the land bank in the city had the greatest site assembly. So where we had the most land, where we could build the biggest density. So even with R&I, we also had 4 city planners that were assigned different neighborhoods throughout the city, so one for the north, south, east, and west. And they are tasked with attending community meetings every month and really being a conduit between the community and local government. So whenever we have updates that we want to share, they would bring those updates to community meetings. And then when the community had feedback on quality of life or concerns they had, they bring that feedback back to city government. So we understood that to revitalize a community, it's a lot more than infill housing development and having one staff person that attends those community meetings. There's also some level of resident engagement and empowerment that needs to happen to really improve the place where people live. So we had an idea to start the Proud Places project, which we wanted to mirror Home Headquarters Block Blitz a little bit, but also Rock the Block, a project out of Niagara. And through this, we just really wanted to empower residents. So in the fall, we decided to pilot our first area along Butternut Street from Lodi up to Carbon. So we heard from a constituent that she had lived in the neighborhood for over 20 years, and the neighborhood had changed so much in terms of quality of life and an increase in vacancy. We also held a mayor's power walk there, so city staff could also see some of the change and the challenge that the community was seeing. So from there, we decided to pilot along Butternut. We held 3 community planning meetings to really talk with residents and have them identify some of the challenges that they saw within their community. And then we planned 1 community cleanup and a service provider block party, where we had different service agencies come out and table and really share resources and get people signed up for different services. So from the winter into the summer, our plan is to continue holding planning meetings every week, and our goal is to have in-depth conversations with the community about some of those solutions. So on the city side, we're looking at Butternut in terms of how can we do proactive code enforcement for every single property along that stretch. How can we look at land big lots and get those repurposed? How can we look at some vacant structures, contact owners, and get those back into productive use? We're looping in Syracuse Police Department to look at crime, but from an environmental design standpoint. So what can we change about sight lines and lighting in the area to really improve quality of life? We also partner with DPW, who's looking at sidewalk conditions. So we have the city who's coming in to intervene and improve public infrastructure, but we also have community meetings so that residents can feel empowered to voice some of those problems and concerns, but also plan for a better neighborhood. So we've had conversations where people talk through the history of their neighborhood, they talk through different changes that they want to see and how they want to build community moving forward and how often they'll continue to meet together. So they're currently working to plan 1 Earth Day cleanup event and then 1 larger event for the summer, and then we will task them with continuing to meet throughout the year and continuing to plan together. So that's the initiative. We're hoping to start on the north side, but then select a different area throughout the city to continue the work and bring some city attention and focus to a different neighborhood. So something we're very excited about. We are building the plane as we fly it, so there are a lot of things that we'll learn and we'll change and we'll improve, but we're hoping to really empower residents to first know who to come to if they have a concern about their neighborhood, but also feel empowered to be a part of that solution and strengthening their own community.
Good afternoon. I'm Mark Cass. I'm the director of the Northside Learning Center, and I'll spend a few minutes because I'm hearing this really important theme as we go down the panel. Northside Learning Center was started in 2009 when people in the community, immigrants and refugees themselves, were hearing from a large influx of refugees primarily saying, I gotta learn English, I gotta learn English. And, you know, their initial reaction was, well, yeah, the school district does that, and, you know, there's a lot of organizations, and people are saying, like, waiting lists and times of day. And so this handful of people decided to do something about it. They visited the programs and learned that that was, in fact, true. And kind of their organizing principles: 1, be where people are. New arrivals to this country typically don't have cars. I think we all know our bus system, our transportation system doesn't really meet needs, especially within a particular neighborhood or quadrant of the city. Focus on women as heads of household and first teachers of their children. And, you know, if you really want to have the adults be able to engage, help their children at the same time. So it was an intergenerational approach from the very beginning, rounded up, you know, as many volunteers as they could, found a space above a dollar store and pizza shop, and opened up their doors. And it took off, and I think it's because of these foundational pieces that we're hearing. That, you know, the community knows what it needs, the community is part of the solution, and then it's really an organizing initiative. So Northside Learning Center, in that very first 2 months, actually had 150 people engaged. That's not something I think you would normally see when a startup nonprofit happens. Began to, you know, outgrow the space that we were in. And, you know, we're an all-volunteer organization and needed to raise the rent every month, primarily from supporters, also from our community. And saw a property for sale on Park Street. It was formerly the Holy Trinity Catholic Parish. So it had a school building, had a church in very bad physical shape, and had a huge house which had served as the rectory. So we went and said, we want to buy the school, we want a proper school, we want to own our own place. And they said, well, we can't divide the property, you're going to have to buy all 3 pieces, even though the church had a leaking roof, public floors, no heat. And so I'll fast forward a little bit. The Catholic Diocese was, you know, very good to us. We were able to acquire the property and help a new religious organization, the Mosque of Jesus, Son of Mary, be formed, who would take on the responsibility of renovating and maintaining what had been a church. And so education, broadly defined, is our goal. We have students as young as 4 up to 74 years old at the moment. But it's not just about individual development, you have to develop in place. And so taking on neighborhood initiatives, you know, was kind of a natural step. And with the move to that property, we've really become as much community center as we are a education center. We do a lot with summer youth employment, and 2 summers ago, CMY Works had money to hire kids, had few places to put those kids, so we decided to take on more and more kids by creating a neighborhood outreach initiative. So we had 18 teenagers led by 3 college interns who basically set out in probably a 10-block radius of our building to find out how could we, you know, make our neighborhood better. What are the issues facing? Not a surprise, housing came back as the biggest issue, and housing in many senses. Poor repair, poor, you know, ineffective landlords, unsafe, unhealthy, and not big enough for many of our families. Public safety was the second thing we heard very, very clearly. I don't feel safe. I don't, you know, go to Schiller Park because it's not safe there, and it's not safe on the way there. I don't walk on Butternut after dark. So we heard that clearly, and we also heard that, you know, people don't call the police. And this survey was really terrific because it was young people, were 75, 78% of the respondents, and in most surveys, it's older folks who fill those out and get at least their opinion heard. This skewed very young, skewed new American focused, and, you know, we're not calling the police. And then the third was workforce development, that we know the housing needs a lot of work. You know, the trades are a good opportunity for a living wage, or better than living wage job, a job that you could. So this became branded as Northside Futures by the kids themselves, and one of the youth drew a beautiful logo that's in play here as well. They made kind of an announcement at the end of that summer on you know, what they had found and what some of their visions were, and that group made the first trip to push Buffalo and came back like fired up because they saw that this was just like ours, except this was nice. It felt safe, it was cleaner, houses looked in much better shape, and so they came back fired up, you know, that it can be done. And so we're really appreciative of the opportunity to visit, and then, you know, the relationship and the learnings that we're taking. So Northside Futures has been working, very hard. I guess the last thing to touch on, then I'll pass it to Kate. The city did a housing study which has been released, and there's some action steps, hopefully, that will come out of that. But I had, it made a lot of sense when I saw it. I'd never thought about it that way. We have two big issues in Syracuse. One is the market value problem. People used to say, wow, you can buy houses really cheap. And, but at the same time that we have that, renovations, outpace the, it doesn't seem like a wise investment to fix a house if it's gonna be worth less after your investment in it. And then the other is still affordability, that people have trouble affording the houses even as they are. And so that's a challenge that, I know the city is hoping to gain community input on, but I also think, that, Push Buffalo was probably in a very similar situation, and so, that gives us hope as well. So we're excited to try to make a difference in our, neighborhood area, but also excited to have a citywide group meeting like this, and I think together we can make change. Thanks.
Yes, hi, Kate Atwater, and I'm the preservation planner as well as the public art coordinator for the city. And actually the first time I met Mark was in the transition from when Holy Trinity Church was being converted into a mosque, which was a major project, a major issue for members of the neighborhood, but really ultimately just such a beautiful project. And it is, if anyone has a chance to go and see the mosque, it is a wonderful and very holy space, wonderful place to be. So anyway, first, public art. I was really excited to hear you use artist in Push Buffalo. I mean, artists are, art can be used as amazing activism. Artists are natural activists. They are disruptors. They will come and they will dig into a cause. We have an amazing arts community here in the city. Recently, this is through the TNT's, the Tomorrow's Neighborhoods Today's sector, but we've had this muraling campaign throughout the city, and each of the main neighborhoods or the sectors, as it's divided up, will have at least one mural that is community-based as a result of the City as Canvas program. And I have to give Tina Zagiva from TNT the credit for pulling together this program, which was really based on the neighbors coming together, deciding what theme they wanted for a mural, choosing a location, finding the artist, selecting the artwork, and then having it up. In these neighborhoods, it's amazing how that in itself is community organizing. It's getting to know your neighbors. It's and then you end up with something of beauty that become anchors in the neighborhoods. That people start to say, oh, you just have to take a left at that mural, the new mural, or unfortunately, the City as Canvas funding came through the ARPA, the American Rescue Funds, which are coming to an end. But we are based on the success of this program, we are looking into ways of making this more sustainable. And in the meantime, there are other ways of getting different artwork into your communities, into your neighborhoods, engaging local artists. And that's something I can certainly help with, and would love to talk to more neighbors about how we do. And it's more than just murals too. It can be small scale interventions, if you will. For a while in the Westcott neighborhood, they were painting fire hydrants. I don't know how the fire department felt about that, but they were doing it. It can be bike racks. It can be any number of things up to real sort of sculptural works and so forth. But there's so many wonderful ways that art can actually, both enliven a neighborhood, but also be a function of bringing the neighbors together and starting conversation. So that's one part of my position, and the other is as a preservation planner for the city. And I'm at a point now. Well, I'll say that the city has done a very good job at identifying, the iconic buildings within this community, and really attached to the history that we're all taught about Syracuse. It first starts with the salt, and then it goes to the Erie Canal, and then we have the trains come in, and then we have the highways, and here all of a sudden we're here, right? That is not in any way the full picture of our history here. Obviously, it is deep, it is complex, it is important, and what as the preservation planner, I'm now really looking to ways of drawing out the stories that haven't been told, and in different ways. And it should still be place-based, but really people-centric and culture-centric. And there are just so many important stories that we as a city should be elevating. And there are different ways of doing that, and that is one of the things that I'm certainly beginning to work on now. The other thing I'm really interested about is how the tools of preservation can be used to strengthen neighborhoods and communities. And as has been discussed, and as we're experiencing, change is happening, is about to happen. And we have the highway coming down. We have all the housing initiatives going on. We have Micron and all of that's coming around. We have climate change. Change is happening, and at a very fast pace. So how do we manage that change in a way that protects what we believe as a community, as neighborhoods, is important to us? So the first question is, what makes us a place special? And each neighborhood has a really distinct pattern of development. Each is physically unique. I know when I'm in Tip Hill versus when I'm in the South Side or Sankofa neighborhood, or if I'm on the East Side or so forth, or in the North Side. Each one is so very unique, and I think that we need to be looking at what are those things within our neighborhoods that make them special, that the characteristics, the patterns of development, that we want to make sure as we are moving forward, as change is happening, as there's new development coming in, as we're restoring older buildings, reusing. I know Push was very involved in, you're doing both rehab as well as new construction. What are those things that are really important to the community, that get preserved, that get preserved and taken care of while there is this new layer of change coming on top? So again, I just want to emphasize, this isn't about preventing change from happening, but helping to sort of mold it. We know what we need. Do we know what we want for our neighborhoods? So these are the types of questions and I think challenges that a preservation program in a city such as ours have, and I'm really excited to be able to work with community groups, and very excited to be here today, and hope to be able to continue the conversation. So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Babette Baker, and I am the president of the Onondaga Earth Corps Board. I'm also on the Near West Side Initiative Board. I'm on the Onondaga County Public Library Board. And I have worked in this community off and on most of my life. I know a lot of you in the room. I usually work in the background. I have literally raised millions of dollars for nonprofits in this organization, sometimes just for free, because I have the opportunity as a grant writer to have done that, and I'm one of my people I've worked with right here, so very excited about that. Always looking to support organizations that I care about and that are doing work in the community. And I'm going to let Greg talk about Onondaga Earth Corps, but one of the things I want to talk about today is Women of Pearls and our HEAL initiative. And even though it's a little bit of a different take on what you guys are doing here, we're looking at self-care for Black women as a revolutionary act. And through our HEAL initiative, Healthy, Empowered, and Love, we're really encouraging Black women to push in their own wellness around 7 dimensions of health and wellness, and really talking to them about, if you're pushing to your own self-care, how do you support your families and your community? Because Black women are like the foundation of most neighborhoods. And if we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not taking care of our families, we're not doing the work in our communities, we're not volunteering and those kind of things. And so I can share more information with you guys about that, but I really want Greg to have an opportunity to talk, and so we have an opportunity to answer questions. But I will say we just came through our very first round of funding through the New York State Department of Health, and we had on average couple hundred women come through our HEAL initiative. And for those of you who want to, we walk every Saturday mornings at Destiny Mall at 8 a.m. And in the summertime, we are walking in all the neighborhoods, and there's nothing like coming up that hill and literally seeing 40, 50, sometimes 60 Black women in their bright superhero blue, walking in their communities, talking about their communities, loving their communities, and talking about changing their communities. So when Black women walk, things happen.
Thank you, Madam President. So, I came as backup, but so I am the executive director of Onondaga Earth Corps, and I am the steward of the Earth Corps, which started on the south side of Syracuse at a time when local foundations were trying to have a market impact in a very narrow range of neighborhood on the south side. And they took an asset-based approach. They said, who's here that has the answers already? So this theme comes and ends with me at Earth Corps, but Eli McDonald, who's our founder and still comes every day to the office, he had been doing landscaping work. He was the building superintendent at the Dunbar Center. And so some of the foundations worked with Eli and Cornell Cooperative Extension. There were a couple of organizations that were involved in how can we have young people making a market impact in the neighborhood on the south side. So we started, you had to live within, from this block to this block. It was 81 to Midland and Bellevue up to Castle. And that was the beginning. And so since then, we've employed hundreds of youth focused on improving the neighborhood. We've since grown beyond those neighborhood boundaries. Our youth are 15 to 25 years of age, and our mission is for them to empower themselves in partnership with staff in the community. So all of the work that we do has an environmental focus, which I gotta go visit Buffalo. But we train and hire, and our focuses have been on green infrastructure, urban forestry, natural areas, restoration in our parks. And one of my proudest moments has been when we got a grant to have youth and young adults in our program be the consultants that led the process for our urban forest master plan. So young people in the neighborhoods reaching out to their neighbors to help come up with the goals in the neighborhood for their city. So I came as backup. But yeah, every year we're hiring youth and training youth, and we've also had this progression where the youth are like, we're not done yet. So we started with 15 to 18-year-olds, and then now we moved up to 19 to 25-year-olds, and now we have an advanced track, and now we have some of our crew members are our staff. So growing that capacity from within has been project by project. Starting small, building capacity, and I love working with youth and most of the people in the room, because those real relationships with community members is what gives young people their energy to create change.
But one of the things Greg has not mentioned about Under the Earth Corps is when you get those kids outside, all the research is showing about how greenery, sunlight, having your feet in the soil, how that really benefits health and wellness. And so he doesn't talk a lot about that, but all the research is saying that. I mean, places like Japan are actually giving park passes to make sure that people get out and get into nature, because we know that profound effect that nature has on our biology as well as our mental and emotional health.
Fantastic. So we have a little bit of time. Give our panelists a round of applause. So we have a little bit of time for questions. If you have questions that you wrote down on cards, we'll do our best to sort of pick some of these up and moderate that a little bit. But if someone maybe wants to start with a question while we collect these cards, we'll get moving that way. Also, if we don't get to your question, the second half of our event is going to have a lot more time where you might be able to ask some questions to our panelists one-on-one in a much smaller environment. So it won't be the last time you get to hear or interact with our panelists and speakers today. So if there's a question, I can start. Looks like maybe that one's, maybe this one is maybe more directed at Kimon. So Proud Places, will the city release a guide to starting Proud Places neighborhood groups? So the question seems to be about topics, activities, funding sources within the Proud Places project.
Yeah, that's a great question. So as we build this out, I think ideally we would create a planning toolkit for community members to use. And there you can find a guide on how to plan different events in your community. So if, say you want to do a cleanup, the city actually has an Adopt a Block program where you can adopt a block. The mayor's office will actually give you vests, trash bags, and gloves, and then you're almost a steward of that block for the summer or whenever the weather is warm. So you can pick one block, you can pick several blocks, but you'll go out, collect trash, and then DPW will work with you to actually collect that trash so no one is fined. So ideally, we would create a guide to then put out to the community. We could connect with different nonprofit organizations. I know Community Foundation and Gifford Foundation have some smaller level grants, so we also provide some information on those. So ideally, as we build this out in the summer, we would release a planning toolkit.
Excellent, thank you. So the next question seems like maybe Kate answered this a little bit, but I think it's something on a lot of people's mind, and it's Micron. So just really thinking about how your organization might be thinking about the impacts Micron might have on housing, the environment, water, all these things that we really care deeply about here in Syracuse. This is sort of directed at anyone, so whoever wants to take the first stab at that is welcome to do so.
I guess I'll add equity to that question, gentrification to that question, what we're working on is primarily in the workforce development space, making sure that folks who live in the city in particular and on the north side, New Americans in particular, have access to that whole range of jobs, not only at Micron. How do we help folks who might be educationally underprepared by their public school experience? So those equity issues are one. Certainly, it feels good to me anyway to not be operating always in scarcity. So there is some opportunity and there's some dangers with those opportunities. So we're really interested in getting ahead as quickly as possible on the housing so that it is community owned, community controlled. And then environmentally, the amount of water is just mind boggling if they get to full build. So those are the things that we're working on, thinking about right now.
Any other panelists want to tackle this question?
I would just add on the environmental front, they've hosted a number of kind of hearing sessions with environmental groups. I would say friend and foe, or for some accountability. They have a pretty progressive stance on kind of their environmental practices. I would say there are a lot of questions still with effluents that are going to be coming out. So they're open to kind of the community giving them pushback. I have some concerns about kind of our community and our local and state government's capacity to keep them accountable, because a lot of their answers are like, oh well, we're following process that's led by said agency, whether it's county or state DEC. So they're doing their due diligence, but I'm glad that they've invited a lot of scientists, environmental scientists, to the table. And if there's anyone that is not at the table that wants information on how they can be part of that, let me know.
And I would just encourage residents to actually do their own due diligence and their own educating of themselves about what these kind of projects do to the neighborhood, both good and bad. You know, we see Micron in other communities. Blueprint 15 is coming up. I'm just using that as an example as well. Purpose-built community has been around for about 20, 30 years now. They've built these projects in other cities. You can look at the data and see how those purpose-built communities, Blueprint 15 projects, have impacted those communities. Atlanta, I think Cleveland, and other places. So I would just encourage all of you is just don't go into those rooms uneducated and just like waiting for people to give you answers. Go in with really hard questions so that you can hold those folks accountable.
Great. Any of the other panelists want to address this?
Yeah, I can chime in a little on housing. So Mark touched on the housing market study and the strategy that we're currently working on. So last year we commissioned CZB, a private consulting company, to do a housing study to look at what our market conditions look like, how do we compare to the county, and then how the county and the city compares to the United States. And from that study they found, like Mark mentioned, we have an affordability crisis or affordability gap, but also a market gap. So our property values are extremely low in the city of Syracuse, and even neighborhoods that we consider to be very stable and high value, they are average in the county. So that's something that we're grappling with, but also the affordability problem. There's a significant portion of our population that does not make a lot, makes under $25,000 a year. So as we think about housing in Micron, the consultants suggest that our markets aren't even strong enough to see gentrification the way other cities do, but while we build out the strategy, we are thinking about how we pair anti-displacement strategies with increasing market values. And through that, I know we passed rezone last year, so that set aside some affordable housing minimums. So if a developer is building a project that I believe has 25 units, at least 10% of those units need to be affordable housing. So those things, the rezone has been passed, so that is in place. So all new development projects that we see will be subject to those parameters and guidelines. But as we build out those strategies and decide where to invest and how to invest, we are thinking about the market gap and the affordability gap on an equal scale.
If there's another panelist who wants to chime in on this, I'm also sort of thinking about food and our schedule. Don't necessarily want to get in the way of that. So if another panelist wants to address the question, we can sort of take a break. We can move on to food, and then after that we'll have more time to engage with our panelists and speakers one-on-one.
I just want to add one thing. So I think one thing that, since y'all have such a great relationship with the city, this is something that we have not done, but something you guys should consider, is I don't know what the housing and the land bank is, but only keeping those for if you're going to build affordable housing. So really saving that for affordable housing developers, especially as you've got all these new companies that are coming into your community, which they're probably going to bring, again, more affluent people that will be able to afford to buy and renovate and do all of these things. So if you want an anti-displacement strategy, that is one control that you currently have that you should not give up. I think the other thing is 10% is great, but 30%, there's just a lot of, that's what we use as a 30% marker, is 30% will keep, will create a more mixed income, mixed amenity neighborhood. It will not create the kind of mass displacement. Right. The other thing with Micron coming in is you should have actual contracts with them, and we've done this with a couple of big new developers that have come in, or different corporations that have come in, is having a percentage of workers or what have you,
Someplace.
but not just entry level. It can begin with entry level, but there has to be opportunity for mobility, but also that they should be paying either workforce training organizations locally, or they should have their own training in order to be able to provide that.
Yeah, that's one of the issues that in Avalon and Southside, we've been talking about. We've been wanting, in fact, Micron said, I said to them, why don't you come and walk in my shoes? And I don't mean a selfish mind. And so they said they're gonna do that. And we wanna hold them to that. And I'd like to talk to you about the housing situation and all the stuff you just told us, is the same thing that we're working on, but let's do something.
Great.
Yeah, with that, let's thank our panelists.